Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here, checking out the episode. Of course, you know what to do if you like what you see, what you hear, hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with your favorite artists. And I could not be more excited. Sleater-Kinney are back. Carrie, Corin are here with a new album called Little Rope. Hello, y'all.
Hi,
Hi.
thanks for having us.
It's great to see you guys, and I know I want to say it's been a long time. It hasn't really been a long time. It just feels like it's been a long time, I think. But I'll do what probably everyone's doing right now. Let me throw you the compliments. This record is so good. You all have never let me down. Somehow you're still batting 1,000 on your records. No small feat. So just congratulations on another fantastic disc you've got here.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're really happy about this one. Excited to have people hear the whole thing, and definitely excited to play these songs live on tour.
Let me I was trying to figure out how to get into the record because there is in the press release there is a story of loss and grief, and sometimes I know the press release doesn't tell the whole story because I know some of these songs also started before the events, and I didn't want to make any assumptions, and I thought I would just kind of throw it at you to see what the story of this album is in its totality, I guess. And
Corin?
Little Rope is an album that is a journey. You know, we started the album a while before we went into the studio. We started writing songs that were personal and pretty emotional. I think everyone, coming out of the pandemic was going through something. And I think a lot of these songs were reflecting that. But I think that, you know, even though we started recording the album during the summer before, Carrie had a very personal tragedy that happened, the whole album was definitely impacted by a sense of loss and a sense of, um, our friendship and our collaboration was tested by it, and it was asked of more because of what she was going through. And so I think the whole album became emotionally tied to that, to what happened.
Yeah. And I think the stakes just feel high on this record, but it doesn't mean that everything is dire. I wouldn't say this is a dark record. I think it wrestles with the in-betweenness, the precariousness of our lives. But part of that precariousness is balancing between 2 disparate states. And sometimes that state is joy and levity, and other times it's, despair. But there are a lot of shimmering, catchy moments on this record. I think it really just affected the process, and that Corin sings. When people hear this record, this is probably the most Corin's sang on a Sleater-Kinney record in a really long time. I just wasn't in a place where I could sing as much. And there's just a lot of care and carefulness in terms of the composition and arrangements on these songs. It's just a record we threw ourselves into. And I think people will hear that. There's an energy and a urgency and a restlessness, and also a bit of celebration.
yeah, and the celebration, you can hear it in the music because for as heavy as the topics might be, it ends up being a fun album to listen to. And that's one of those moments where I'm like, at what point try not to be voyeuristic, try not to read too much, trying to just take in the songs as they're given. And as an artist, I don't know how much you think about that. I don't know how much you think about the album in a sort of a linear way, because starting out with Hell, I think that goes against everything I just said. That's not what I would call a fun song. It's a heavy song. It's a beautiful song in its darkness. How does that set up the record, if you think of it like that way at all?
We wanted to start with Hell because we wanted to drop the listener into this world that we were building. that was this sort of dark, slightly sinister sound at the beginning of the song, but also very melodic and contemplative. But it just has like a very rock and roll chorus where we're all just like yelling along with each other, that we're all, it has this idea that we're all kind of in this together. And that is, I think, what the album is trying to do, is saying like, yes, we have these very dark moments, we have these fun, silly, manic moments, but we're doing it together. You're not alone. And that's what I think that the record is trying to do, with the musicians and the audience.
Yeah. Carrie, you were talking about the music too. At this point in your career, do you all still think about the specific how a record should sound? I mean, does the record just come on its own, or do you all still think like, oh, let's try this sound? Does that happen at all?
Absolutely. I think, and it has happened, I would say, starting with the hot rock, which was such a change from Dig Me Out, which Dig Me Out was very raw. We recorded it in a matter of days. And then the hot rock is sort of contemplative and understated and has all of these intertwining melodies and kind of is introverted really to Dig Me Out's extroversion. So there's a real precedent, I think, to us thinking about the sonic landscape of the album. And, there is a vernacular that, Corin and I in particular have created around Sleater-Kinney, the way that our guitars intertwine, the way our voices overlay. But we're not precious with how they fit together. We know that they will fit together. We trust that process. There's something sort of ineffable about it. But, in terms of what does the guitar sound like? Well, let's do some tone hunting, like what let's get something more rubbery here. Let's get something that has a little more chorus on it, or a little more flange. Like how can this instrument express itself in a way that suits the song? I think it has to suit the song. I don't think we start with a sound and say, let's build a song around this specific sound, but is there a way of conjuring something or evoking something through changing up how we approach things? And it's one of the reasons we work with producers. And I think, with this album, we had John Congleton come in, and he was the right combination of not being too purist about who and what Sleater-Kinney is. He knows, he's been a fan of the band for a long time. He knows what's great about this band. He knows what we're capable of, but he's also like, okay, how can we mess this up in moments that take people by surprise? So we're always interested, I think, in forwarding the narrative, having moments of innovation, challenging ourselves, but being rooted in who we are. We know who we are. And, we're still working within the, we're not making a crazy left turn jazz album. Although when people do that, like Andre 3000, sometimes it's great. You never know, but we haven't done that yet.
Yeah. The first time I listened, as I was just taking the notes, because sometimes we use other bands, of course, to kind of explain. And for the first time, I wrote down Gang of Four and Sonic Youth. And I thought some of this record, it sort of reminds me of Gang of Four and Sonic Youth. And it surprised me that I don't think you all had ever reminded me of those two bands before. And I might have expected that, if that makes sense.
That's so funny, because we were definitely trying to remind people of Gang of Four on Dig Me Out. I mean, yeah. I remember writing the riff for One More Hour thinking, I hope everyone knows this is like a Gang of Four song. So I'm glad it took us 25 more years to get anyone to think it sounded like Gang of Four.
Now it's there. It's there out in the open. Who was it? You mentioned Congleton. Called him a perennial rascal. I read that somewhere.
Oh, that was me. He is a little perennial rascal. He's like having a brother in the studio. We're just like, we're always needling. Corin would just be like, oh my God, you guys, like rolling her eyes. The amount of nicknames that he comes up with, none of which we could use on the air. It's yeah, he's very, very fun.
Those go down
as well as being as well as being good at his job. He's very fun.
Uh, Corin, as we talk about the music, your voice is an instrument too, which has always been one of the most powerful instruments in rock and roll, and I mean that. Um, do you go into it? I'm sort of asking this in the same way, like vocally, with as much singing as you do, did you go into it thinking of it in any certain way?
I think that, you know, I think that I tried different approaches on this album, maybe more than other albums in the past. That I would try a song a certain way and maybe come back to it to get an approach that was like a little more nimble and a little lighter in certain ways, so that um you know if I could start the verse in a different place, it gives me more runway to reach a larger apex in the chorus, if that makes sense. So it's just, I think that is one of the things about doing it for a long time, is having the patience to like really engineer the song to give you the largest impact. Sometimes that means starting much smaller with the voice than you would actually think.
Yeah. Well, the fun moments are all over it, and I know I've used that word. I'm trying not to overuse that word, but especially on the single, with "Say It Like You Mean It." Um, it's so sing alongy, I guess. In those moments. Which, by the way, and watching the music video, you've got J. Smith Cameron on there, who until recently I'm in Louisville. I think she's from here, or maybe she spent a lot of time in here. But of course, there's Succession, and all of my attention was there. Is she a friend? I mean, how did she end up in the video?
I just asked her. It's just, I mean, I noticed she was following me on my personal Instagram account, and I'm a big fan of Succession, and I just thought, why not? I'll reach out and see if she's up for making a music video. I don't think this is something she's done yet. She's done a lot of things. She's done a lot of Broadway. She's done a lot of film and TV, but she hasn't done a music video. And we were very lucky that she was open to it. She took it very seriously, but I think in the end we had a lot of fun. And yeah, I think we're both very grateful that she was game.
Yeah, it's cool one to watch. I'm just kind of looking at the track list over here. Like, Don't Feel Right. I mean, I feel like as I hear it, we're really down in the hole in that moment of the album. Maybe, but you haven't given up. Um, I'll kind of throw this one back out there too. What can you say about this one? Because that's just one of those I've come back to that one a few times, as much as enjoyed it as a curiosity. Like, where are we here?
Yeah. I mean, I think in some ways that song is like a love letter to friends and people in your life when you are wrestling with despair and despondency and grief and depression. And it is a very isolating feeling sometimes, and it's disorienting and it's incoherent. That's what I think about this song in terms of like the narrator. Like, you get to the chorus, or and it's sort of just saying like, don't, just kind of stay away from me. Like, I'm not in a good place. It's that pushing away. But what I always think about is just that line, like, all I know is I don't feel right. Don't feel right. Like, it's kind of reducing something so much bigger than you that you can't yet grasp. You don't yet have the language for. You just know that like everything has been reordered in your life. Everything's been reconstituted and reconfigured in a way that exposes all the cracks and all the horrors and all the vulnerabilities. And it leaves you kind of sick and forlorn. And so, yeah, so that to me, it also has it feels like a driving song to me. Like, it feels like the way that, it's kind of structured musically, like it has that kind of, it's a little bit propulsive, and you just kind of repeated riff in the verse, and you keep going and driving along and ruminating and meditating until you come out the other side. And I think that's why that song is kind of where it is in the order of things too.
Yeah. And then Journey. And by the end of the record, I do feel like it's something has lifted a bit, that there's light there. There's sort of this get back to workedness, or
Back
get
to
back
work.
to life.
Yeah. It's all about, it's actually underwritten by a lot of companies where we want people to just get back to work. That work everyone feels so validated for doing.
But that last line, or I'll find a way, I'll pick your lock, right at the end of the album. I don't know, and Corin, what can you say? Like, as we talked about Hell leading it off, like, where are we left here?
I think there is an element of like a sliver of hope, of resistance at the end of the album, that we haven't really given up, even though, we find we find the journey very difficult at times, that, there's still an element of the punk rock, of like, well, you can call me or whatever you want. You can look at me however you want, but I'm still fighting back, and that's kind of in the DNA of this band. And I think it's something we want to kind of leave people with.
Yeah. It is powerful. And I also want to say it has a beautiful album cover that goes along with it. I don't know if you all think of that in a way that speaks to it as well. Like, Carrie, when did you learn to float? Might be the question.
I know. Well, like a lot of people learned how to make bread during the pandemic, but I just worked on that floating. Yeah.
Really envious of that. I've had lots of dreams where I do that. I haven't been able to master.
Yeah. Yes, that is Sophia Nolly Allison. She's a photographer, and we were really, really drawn to her work. She seemed just to capture that kind of precariousness that I was talking about earlier, that like these states that are liminal and where you're sort of stuck on one precipice with a view of the next, and not sure where you're going to land. And I think she was really good at kind of capturing that eeriness and sort of a very momentary serenity before a potential fall or crash. Just it feels, again, those kind of the high stakes that exist even in the quiet moments.
Yeah, it's powerful. The whole thing is powerful. I'm hoping I'm not over complimenting you guys. And again, I don't mind if I'm over complimenting you guys. So seriously, congratulations on this. I love what you all do. I'm so grateful that you've kept at it. And thanks for taking the time to talk about it.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, a pleasure to be here, Kyle. Thank you so much.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All 3 of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.